Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to the October 27th, 2021 Committee of the Whole meeting. Got some audio concerns. Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask for any declarations of conflict. Seeing none, motion for adoption of the agenda. Who seconded? All in favor? And no appointments or delegations today. Straight on to new business. So move to a motion to accept all the reports. Move seconded. All in favor? All right. 5.1, third quarter department reports, and we'll start with Director Yates.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. There's no formal presentations today on the quarterly reports, and they come fast on the heels of the last one as we got our timing back on track for these quarterly reports, but we have numerous staff on hand to answer any questions that Council might have.
Okay, thank you. Well, we can start on the administrative side. Does Council have any questions that they want to touch on the administrative reports? Councillor McLean.
This is contained within the administrative side, but it might be more towards engineering. I just noticed a comment about the artist design crosswalks. I believe that is for Trail Avenue. So I'm just wondering if we have a timeline and when to do that, because Trail Avenue is looking great, but that may be one more piece that comes later.
Yes, to answer Councillors McCain through your worship, through the chair. Sorry, the crosswalks are weather dependent. They're thermoplastic applications, so they need certain weather conditions to be implemented. So I think right now, and Siobhan might have some additional information on this. I believe we are working to have that lined up, and it's just a matter of timing it with the contractor's availability and when we could find an appropriate weather window, because we do require dry conditions for that.
I don't have anything to add to that. Curran is correct in stating that we're waiting for good weather.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Is there anything else on the administration part of the report? All right, moving on to finance and IT. If Council have questions on the finance and IT side. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. On page 19, under IT third quarter highlights, it mentions, hybrid meeting, echo issues, community room, working on a long-term solution. I mean, obviously we have nothing implemented today, but wondering if we do have a timeline that we can share with the public for that.
We've received, through the chair, we've received some pricing, and we're going back and forth with a vendor to kind of narrow down exactly what we want to do in that room, and to just make it more efficient for everybody that's in the room, including like council and the public. So we're still just working towards firm quote here.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else or follow up on that?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
So just as a follow-up then, recognizing we've got some back and forth with a potential vendor, are we hoping to have something in place in November or by year end or November next year? Just some sort of an idea on timeline.
Okay, through the chair, yeah, timeline's a difficult one. Electronics these days are months out. We ordered a couple of computers. It just took 8 to 10 weeks to get here. And they're saying that once we figure out what we want to do in that room, you're looking at likely February, March.
Okay, Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. On page 22, second bullet talks about participation on the Regional Active Travel for Kids Tactical Working Group. I know when we had the Community Association budget meeting with West Seashelt Elementary, with West Seashelt Community Association, the West Seashelt Elementary PAC joined us. And they talked about some of the paths and travel, arrangements to school for some of those children. I'm wondering if some of the work of this committee ties into the PAC and also will be showing up inside of our budget this year.
We have taken the request and the conversation, and we put it into a spreadsheet for senior staff to look at what things that they figure that they can move forward on, and the things that may need, either more money or council's involvement. So at the upcoming meeting, we're going to have all those minutes on the in the budget package, and so we'll be able to discuss them further at that point.
Okay, thank you. Follow up, or anybody else on the planning side? Councillor Talk.
Thank you. Looking on page 23, the two bullet points at the top of the page there, Bylaw 580, I see that it looks like it has slipped a little because I think we were talking about third or fourth quarter 2021 previously. And then the short-term rental review project, it's good that we've got, consultant assistance for this, and we are moving into phase 2 of the review. I assume, again, timing, not something we're going to have done by the end of the year. Do we have an approximate idea on when this project may come to conclusion? And then I guess if it's past January or February, I assume that would be too late to have any impact on 2022 for short-term rentals, just to confirm.
Yes, thank you. And through Chair Scott, happy to answer those questions. We have entered into contract for consultant assistance on zoning bylaw 580. We met with them yesterday. They've given us some ideas, some feedback on the review of the draft that we've presented to them. So that is moving along. Short-term rentals, yes. We're coming to a point where we'll be presenting information to council in the coming weeks, respecting priorities. And I believe that that's the next step is looking at the specific direction we go and where on the regulatory spectrum council chooses to go with on the short-term rental regulation. So I would suggest it would be optimistic to say it'll be completed by February, but we are spending a lot of time on that. In spite of the fact of hiring consultants and engaging with them in secured contracts, it does take significant amount of staff time to manage that, to research, to follow up, and so forth. But both of those projects are key priorities, and we do want to move forward with them in the best way we can.
Okay. Councilor McLean, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. Another one for planning here, middle of page 22. I appreciate that there's work begun on the pedestrian first policy. That was something that we identified in the strategic plan. I'm wondering if we could just have a high level overview of what that's focusing in on so far.
To date, it's very early stages, but the higher level overview would be to contribute towards planning and engagement of some of our capital projects, such as the Mason Road through to Reeves Road project, working with the school districts. Our community planner also worked with our manager of sustainability and engineering to insert some of that type of content into the RFP for the master transportation study. So at this point, it's looking at our various initiatives, trying to weave them all together. And then we can look at Wharf Road project upcoming, how we can then promote our downtown walkability. And that key piece will bring sidewalks from here at Municipal Hall all the way through to the north part of Wharf Avenue, and communicating and publicizing those types of initiatives.
Okay. Anybody else on the planning side? Oh, Councillor McLean.
One more for planning. I just wonder if the Director of Planning could just qualitatively describe the number of development applications coming in. I see the numbers in front of us. I see a comment that they're increasing. What kind of stuff are we seeing coming in just in a general sense?
Mm-hmm. Sure, great question. And certainly council, of course, is aware of the larger projects, so the TELUS Living and so forth. We are still seeing 4-lot, 2-lot, 12-lot subdivision applications, some of that single family stuff. We're seeing properties in Upper Davis Bay that are for sale that have subdivision potential, great interest there. Still grinding away with Grand Excelsior development application west of Wakefield Road. They sent us some content yesterday, which will lead to a meeting next week. So it's the whole spectrum. It well and truly is. Development permits. We have 2 or 3 zoning compliant development permits in the books right now that are moving into APC and council review. One up on the hillside on Calgary Street across from Chatleach, one at Trail Avenue, the High Point, the latest phase. So these are multi-unit ownership buildings that are zoning compliant, so they don't have quite the same profile as a rezoning OCP application, but council will still see them. So I know it sounds a little bit cliche, but across the spectrum, we're seeing a little bit of everything. I hope that's not too general, and happy to provide more detail if you like.
Nope, that's what I was looking for. I see the numbers in front of me, so I was looking for that kind of description. Thank you.
Sure, you bet.
Okay, thanks for that. So we can move on to the engineering side. For that third quarter report, anybody want to speak or ask questions on that? Councillor Toth.
It's not on any particular page in the report, at least that I found, but I do notice, and I've had a couple of observant residents point out to me that we've got a whole lot of orange paint that's gone down on various parts of our roads that are in pretty rough shape, and I'm just wondering if we've got some road repair that's coming up, or is that to just identify problem areas, or just looking for an update on what's going on there.
Yes, to answer Councillor Toth's question through the chair. I don't know the specific locations that are being referenced with the paint, but it is part of our new pothole protocol that anything we see is identified and marked promptly as a hazard or a potential hazard or something that requires repair. So the protocol says that we're to mark that as soon as we notice it and repair it within a certain time frame, which I believe is we have to have some sort of intermediate step in place within 72 hours and have it repaired within a week. And it's part of increasing our service levels and being more proactive about pothole identification and repair. So it may be related to that, but without knowing the specific locations, I can't speculate, but that might be one reason for seeing more paint than what has been previously noted.
Go ahead, Councillor Cruiser.
Just a follow-up to Councillor Toth. When you do these repairs, is that something you outsource to a company, or do we do that in-house? Or does it just depend on the scope of the actual area and how much there is to do?
Yes, it depends on the size of the repair. Some of the smaller potholes we're able to fill with what's called cold mix, which essentially can be loaded onto the back of a pickup truck and can be shovel deployed and packed quite easily. If it's a larger repair that requires the asphalt to be cut, then that would be contracted out, and we have qualified vendors for that that we can utilize quickly for those types of repairs.
Good. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Yeah, just in terms of following up on locations, I think in particular the road up towards the arena has had a significant amount of temporary markings applied to it. And I know that the Hill and Dale area has had some temporary markings applied as well. So just a couple specific spots that come to my mind.
If you are able to follow up with an email afterwards on those locations, I can bring that to the attention of staff and determine if a service request has been put in place to deal with potholes. I suspect that those locations have been marked because they will be the subject of future pothole repairs or some form of asphalt repairs.
Kuster?
I can answer one question for Councillor Toss. I did speak to John Devison about the Hilldale, and because I had some people approach me, and they have issued a PO for that one. They're just waiting for BA Blacktop. So.
Okay, thank you. My question for Director Dillon is just on the Sea Shelter Airport. Do we have an updated timeline on when the lights are going to be up and running?
I believe we're going through the design and pre-ducting that's supposed to happen in November. Next week we're going to have another capital project update, and I will ensure that we are clear on an anticipated start date to the construction work in the next capital update.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Looking at the wastewater category, I don't see any mention here about the Wakefield lift station other than some annual maintenance. Do we have anything that's going to be coming forward in advance of budget, or are we going to be addressing the lack of grant funding during budget?
The Wakefield lift station will be presented as part of the 2022 capital budget program. And we anticipate at this moment that we will be likely have to borrow money for that, but we're still deciding on how we're going to fund that, but it will be part of the 2022 capital budget. There was a funding opportunity potentially available, but the intake for that is at least a year away, and it doesn't align with the type of work that we need to do. So we're going ahead with the project in 2022. Subject to council approval, of course.
Correct. Councillor Lamb, you got your hand up?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, touch base on the Dusty Road, the septic receiving site up there. And just, I know that the lease is coming up on that. I mean, I know it's 10 years or so. It's a long ways out there, but it's not that far away. And I'm just kind of wondering if there's any negotiations or anything started or any further thought on that at this moment.
No negotiations at this time, but we are, I believe we have money set aside, and Director Douglas might be able to identify if there's a carryover project for planning for that site to look at potential alternative locations. So we will go ahead with the planning in the coming year. So that will be undertaken, but there are no specific negotiations occurring at this moment.
Through the chair, yes, we've identified $150,000 from last year to do some planning on the future of that site.
Councillor Lamb, do you have a follow-up, or?
Yeah, I just, you know, I just see that there's you know, we're getting a few letters in from some of the contractors that use that facility, and I know, like, what was it, 7 years ago, there was a potential to move, we were looking at, a direction to move that plant into. And it's an old plant. It needs work. And I think there's some potential to move forward with this. So anyways, it's just one of those things. It needs to be addressed, I guess, in my opinion, anyways. And I guess one of the things that comes out of this is Kurt KWL, one of our consultants, has done they were doing a study, I believe, or trying to get some information from the public with regards to reclaimed water, and I'm just wondering if there's information coming back from that report at this time, or if they released any information to us on that yet.
The survey was recently completed, so they're looking at that survey information and compiling it. And I think my understanding is the survey information indicated a preferred option. And so the consultant now is looking at the feasibility of each one of those options, and will be coming forward with a draft report to be reviewed by staff. And once that's at a point where it can be finalized, there should be a presentation coming forward to council at that moment. So they're working on it right now.
Okay. Yeah, and it's once again on my behalf, on my side of the story here. My understanding is that there is substantial funds available at this time, or not at this time, but for projects that use reclaimed water. And so, I would, and it's for a capital project. It's not for studies or whatever. So and I know there is a time frame on it. So, I guess I'm hoping that we can see the KWL study come to us sooner than later. And you always have your thinking cap on. So hopefully you've got a good project lined up for us, and hopefully we can. I would like to see council move forward with trying to get one of these grant applications underway. So on your toes.
With the aforementioned grant opportunity that I said came out recently, that would not align well for Wakefield. Could be more appropriate for Dusty Road or reclaimed water. So if there's an opportunity to advance a project through that grant funding opportunity, we will definitely explore that.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Rowe, do you have anything that you want to pipe in on before we move on to the next item?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Councilor Todd.
Thank you, Chair. On page 44, sort of right in the middle of the page, it's not a question. I just wanted to take note of the non-potable water line from the Untitled well, resulting in a 33% decrease in the SCRD drinking water usage. So that's not only reducing our treated drinking water consumption within the regional system, but it's also reducing our cost because we are paying a metered rate there. And I do note that the staff are planning for a capacity increase of that line. So that's fantastic news. I just wanted to say thank you to our operations staff for recognizing that and moving forward on that. On page 43, the page before, it talks, at the bottom of the page, talks about the fields, Kinnickinnick and Piccadilly Park. And they got absolutely beaten through the heat wave and the drought this summer. Of course, when I was at Hackett Park on Sunday, it was 4 inches of water on the field, but it is what it is. I know a couple of years ago we sort of, kicked around the idea of looking at possibly a well up in the Kinnickinnic area to irrigate those fields. And I'm just wondering, Director Dillon, is that something you had been made aware of or given any thought to or would consider us looking at if we brought it forward in a budget request?
Yes, through the chair, to answer your question, Councillor Toth, the issues at Kinnickinnic Field and what has happened because of the drought we had last summer has been a ongoing discussion with the parks manager, Jamie Anderson. And we are looking at what the options are going forward. If these heat events and droughts are the new normal, then we have to come up with a strategy to deal with those, because it's not desirable for the users, such as the soccer community and the other users of that facility, to have to wait this long to use those fields every year. So we have overseeded and understand the seed is taken. So hopefully that will address the short-term concerns there. We are looking at options for a well. I understand there is some infrastructure in the area in terms of pipes, and we just have to figure out where those go and if those can be somehow utilized. There could be an option to use truck delivery from our ebb tide groundwater well if we really needed to during the summer months, but we're currently not equipped with the right truck to do that efficiently. So it's definitely something we're putting our thinking caps on and figuring out what we can do, whether we stage activities there in a certain way that could prevent damage during critical times of the year, and all options are on the table.
Follow-up, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that answer, Director Dillon. I know through the surveys that were done, reclaimed water, irrigating our parks, fields, what have you, it's not something I'm opposed to. It's a great idea. I just don't want us to necessarily wait for whatever it might take to be able to develop the infrastructure out that far. We're talking pumping stations and a fair amount of pipeline to get up to that area. So by the time we get there, it might be a sand dune. So if there's anything we can do in the interim, happy to support it. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor McLean and then Councillor Lamb.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Councillor Toth. I think given the degree of damage that we've seen to the fields, I'd be really interested in hearing more about the reclamation efforts that we had to do, how long the fields are out of service for. So just to understand both the financial, the staff cost of this, and the impact on the community because of this damage to the field. So I think maybe a course of action I'd like to see is that staff come back with a report on damage to the sports fields, just to kind of do a postmortem on what happened, so then we can try and think of how to move together better in the future.
We could provide a report, a summary report of the situation there, the damages that occurred, and what the implications are for the next regular council meeting, if council so desires.
Yeah, I think I'll make that recommendation that council direct staff to prepare a report on damage to sports fields in summer 2021.
Okay, we got a seconder on that. And any other discussion on it?
I think what we'd be looking for is, if we're looking to move forward with a well, what's the rationale, right? So it's that business case around that. So what is the damage? What's the impact on the community? How much staff time and cost does it take to bring those fields back up into some kind of usable condition, right? Because those then, depending on what comes back, that would support the drilling of a well to maintain those fields when we actually go to stage 3 or 4 with our water in the summer.
Okay.
Just to provide some extra information with regards to that point, Your Worship, we would have to do some hydrogeological assessment work in the area to see if a well is even possible. So it's not guaranteed that we could find a well or access the right aquifer. And the other issue too is drilling wells and utilizing groundwater is not a easy process regulatorily speaking. My understanding is it's taking the provincial government up to a year to license usage. And for the ebb tide groundwater well, we were in process. So because of that, we have been allowed to use that facility that's in there. It's existing and it was recognized as a use that was ongoing, and we were allowed to use that. But with any new well, there will be a process that we'll have to go through. And I'm not saying that process would happen within 6 months. I think it's more like a year or two timeline to get approval. So that does pose a challenge to implementing a groundwater well at that location. So I think as part of planning, we will have a engineering design budget in our 2022 budget we'll be presenting, and it's meant to look at issues like these that arise that we can come up with plans with and see what the options are.
Mayor Segers.
Thank you. So if it's a 2-year process, which I think, given we sit at the regional board and we're seeing how long some of these processes take, we would probably want to get the work started fairly soon, because I don't think this is a one-off. We're going to be dealing with this ongoing. So the sooner we get started, the better we're off.
Okay, so we had a motion. Did you, you probably need it reworded or reiterated?
I have that the committee directs staff to come back to council with a summary report on the damage to sports fields from the summer 2021.
Okay, and it was seconded. Any further comment?
Would that
Mr. Lamb, do you have a comment on that motion or no?
I'm just kind of wondering, would that include costs? She's just said damage, but it doesn't. We need to know a general idea of what the cost, the cost, so we have a business case.
Yeah, I think that's implied in that motion.
So just to clarify, in terms of cost, there's 2 types of costs. There's tangible and intangible costs. So the tangible is obviously the cost to repair the field, the overseeding, the watering. Those are quantifiable. What's not quantifiable are the intangible costs, and that would be delays to user groups and the impacts that has on the community. So just to clarify that staff cannot attempt to quantify those intangible costs, but they are a part of this, and we understand that. So we will focus on the tangible costs associated with reestablishing that field.
Okay, I think that's fair. The intangibles, as far as delays in the fields and stuff, I mean, you can put it in there that it took an extra 3 weeks before the user groups were able to use it. Not that there's a tangible financial cost to that, but we'll be able to have that kind of information, correct?
Yeah, we'll have the delays it took and how it affected the normal operations of the field. And from that, we can likely, the reader can surmise some kind of intangible costs that were associated with this event. But to put a dollar number around it would be very difficult.
Okay, sounds good. Councillor Lamb, I see you got your hand up, but I think it might be for another topic. Unless you've got something further on this, we'll vote.
Yeah, we can vote on this. Go ahead.
All right, so all in favor? Carried. Okay, Councillor Lamb, on to your next question.
Yeah, I just with regards to the parks here, I think, if we were going, I think that this is a good case for reclaimed water. Once again, a well is one thing, but it'd be interesting to know because the golf course has asked for reclaimed water, and then there obviously the parks need water. So I'm just kind of you know, it would be a really good opportunity to look at the cost of running the reclaimed water up there as compared to running a well. And that's all. That's my comments for right now. Just a good opportunity. But the other thing too is understanding whether we can really use the reclaimed water on a public facility like that. Are we going to run into health problems, or, you know, anyways. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't. I mean, I've kind of resisted speculation on reclaimed water distribution and the costs and what would be involved, pending the reclaimed water feasibility study that is happening right now. So I'm waiting for the results of that. I think in some jurisdictions they have used reclaimed water on golf courses and for orchard, like apple orchards, not applying them directly onto the edible vegetables, but onto trees that produce edible vegetables. I believe there's some usages depending on the treatment, but at this point, I'm just waiting for the reclaimed water feasibility study to be concluded before taking this to the next step. And I couldn't even hazard a guess on order of magnitude costs, but just based on my experience and doing some directional drilling type work, which is probably going to be required in this case, I would imagine figures well into the 7 figures for getting piped water distribution up to that location. But we'll see what happens with what the results of the reclaimed water feasibility reveal.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on the department reports? Questions? And Councillor Lamb, your hand's still up, but I'm guessing you're done.
I'm done. You bet. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Well, thank you to the staff for all those reports and the answers to the questions, and we look forward to hearing more information on the fields. On to item 5.2, request for decision on the service agreement for Sechelt Community Archives. Move to ask for a motion to receive the report. Move, seconded, all in favor. And over to Ms. Smith.
Thank you. Before you is a report seeking recommendation from committee to council that staff be directed to begin negotiations with the Sunshine Coast Museum and Archives for a 3-year service agreement in order to operate the Sechelt Community Archives. And this is part of a larger project that we sort of started about 18 months ago, where we're working towards increasing the sustainability of our community archives for the community. As you will recall, in 2020, the archives were relocated to a new location above the Royal Bank at Trail Bay Mall. And this fall, we began work on a digitization project in order to digitize the bulk of the Helen Daw collection. That was the original collection donated to the District of Sechelt in the 1990s. We are intending to move forward with a project to have the archives appraised early next year. And right now we're working on the funding, governance, and succession planning piece for the archives. And so, as you may be aware, in previous years, the Sechelt Library submitted a budget to the SCRD for funding. But they did not play a role in the governance or succession planning or overseeing of the archives operations. And so staff are recommending that we actually move forward with finding a local organization. We think the best fit is the Sunshine Coast Museum and Archives, who has a very similar mandate to the Sechelt Community Archives, and they've expressed interest in actually operating the Sechelt Community Archives essentially as a satellite location of the museum. So we won't be able to maintain our community archives in Sechelt, protect the collections that are there, continue growing the collections, and know that they are well cared for and managed by an organization that has a mandate that is aligned with our community archives mandate. They will then be playing a role in terms of succession planning for a new archivist, as our existing archivist does intend to retire next year. They will also play a role in seeking additional funding for individual projects that may come up, summer students, staffing and payroll, all of these sorts of essential items for operating the archives. If there's any questions at all, happy to answer them now.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions on this? Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. So in previous years, the library has applied to the regional district under the museum function, which all the governments pay into, for funding for the housing and staffing. So I assume then that the museum will be doing that this year inside of the budget process?
Correct. That is what we are intending to have happen. Yes.
So I know that when this moved over to the building that it's in now, the district actually covered off the rent for the cost of the lease. Would that then transition to the museum function as well?
That already happened. So the District of Sechelt did cover the cost of the lease for the very first year, 2020. And then when the budget was submitted in 2021 to SCRD, that amount was included in the budget request from SCRD, and SCRD did approve that. So although the lease is in the District of Sechelt's name, and we do make the payments on it, the money ultimately comes back to us via the SCRD.
Okay, so would that also turn into a sublease, or would we just keep maintaining the lease and that funding comes to us and we pay it? Or are those details still need to be worked out?
Correct. We would negotiate that with the museum.
All right, thank you.
Councillor McLean.
Yeah, just wondering about the funding model behind the archives. Is it coming through the SCRD function, or is it coming through the grant and aid? Yeah, go ahead.
The museum function. So they apply at the same time that other community partners and stakeholders like the Sechelt Public Library, the Gibsons Public Library, and the community school program. So it's not a grant and aid. It is actually one of the community partnership agreements.
There actually is a function set up for museum.
No, I mean, up to you guys. I can put it in my house. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Alrighty, any other questions on this? Okay, what's council's pleasure on the recommendations? Councillor McLean.
Thank you. Just briefly, I want to say that I support this wholeheartedly. I think this is the direction we need to be going with the archives, and collaboration across the Sunshine Coast is a really good thing. So I'd be happy to move recommendation 2, that the committee recommend that council direct staff to draft a 3-year service agreement with the Sunshine Coast Museum and Archives for the operation of the Sechelt Community Archives, and that council continue to provide in-kind support for the archives website, phone, and internet for the duration of this agreement. And I'll move recommendation 3, that the committee recommend that council direct staff to place a notice in the newspaper advising of the district's intent to enter into a service agreement with the Sunshine Coast Museum and Archives.
We have a seconder. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? And carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that ends the order. So I guess nothing else we need to discuss right now. So move to, can I get a motion to adjourn? Moved, seconded, all in favor?